Now what happens if this connection gets disrupted? Disrupted by 3D seismic survey air guns fired from a ship into the water, exploring the ocean bed for oil and gas. Moving along a straight line gathering data, each seismic array pulse emits a sound that lasts less than 0.1 seconds at source and is repeated every 10 to 20 seconds.
And these make an incredibly loud noise in the region of 200 decibels underwater.
On land, 200 decibels is louder than a jet engine taking off. But in water, the amplification, reception and experience of sound are varied across species because each is sensitive to different frequencies. We're going to look at some seals. How would they be affected by those air guns?
If animals do have their hearing injured, that is obviously quite a negative impact. They use it in their day-to-day communication for mothers to find pups and vice versa.
Simon, I'm trying to equate this to living in a block of apartments where the neighbor's drilling on his wall every 10 seconds. I'd go crazy.
And it really gets complicated when you're looking at whole ecosystems. You know, like a loud noise like drilling next door, it might not kill you, but it might make you use that room less or
move somewhere else.
Or even just eat a little bit less every day. And that can become really important for species that are on the edge or endangered.
Hell no, Shell must go!
When South Africans heard about the 3D seismic surveys along the pristine wild coast, there was an outcry against the possible impact on marine life, and that reverberated across the country.
No to Shell!
Petroleum giant Shell SA was embarking on a 5-month exploration for oil and gas starting in December 2021, spanning 6,000 square kilometers.
The next thing I saw, there was thousands of people on that beach, you know, and the people were singing and dancing and chanting.
Community coordinator for the Green Connection, 𝗀𝗏𝗋𝗋 was on the ground.
And it was communities from the area that came out. Because our livelihood is connected to the ocean, our culture is connected to the ocean, our heritage is connected to the ocean.
Shell's failure to consult with some small-scale fishing communities and directly affected people in the area tipped the scales. On the 28th of December last year, a court stopped the seismic survey in its tracks. But this wasn't the end of the legal process. Shell is appealing. Attorney 𝗀𝗏𝗋𝗋𝗋 is representing the communities.
So we're celebrating a battle, but the war isn't over.
That's certainly the case, although I do think it was quite a punch in the nose for Shell.
How this clash unfolds hinges on an environmental authorization, which Shell does not have. This only became law in December 2014 under the National Environmental Management Act, NEMA.
So that Shell authorization was applied for and granted under the MPRDA, as was the legislation at that time.
Regulating the industry is the Petroleum Agency South Africa, PASA. CEO Pindile Masingane maintains the 2013 permit is valid.
So we could not have granted them authorization under an existing legislation and then turn around and say, actually, you've got to redo it because now we've got new regulations. The Department of the Environment also agrees with us in this instance.
But one doesn't have to look far to see there's more to the relationship between Shell and the governing party. Even though this permit is for Shell's upstream business, which involves exploration and production, it could be argued when it comes to shareholding, there may be a conflict of interest. The 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 Trust, an investment vehicle for the ANC, is about a 46% shareholder of 𝗙𝗵𝗶𝘀, and 𝗙𝗵 owns 28% of Shell's downstream business, the processing aspect of oil and gas in South Africa. In December, the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 Trust donated 15 million rands to bail out the ANC to pay its salaries. We put it to 𝗀𝗏𝗶𝗏𝗏𝗏, country chair of Shell South Africa.
There's a financial connection between Shell and the ANC/government, and they regulate your permit. Surely your international compliance officers must be concerned about a conflict of interest.
We dispute very strongly the connection between Shell, the ANC, and government. What we do in terms of permitting, we follow the rules to the letter.
But it's a fine line, isn't it? I mean, it's a technical line.
Not in this particular case. In this particular case, we are looking at a shareholder who is working with a different part of the business, and we are working on upstream.
But basically, if Shell thrives, so does the ANC/government. It's as simple as that.
We don't know that and we don't believe that. But we believe that if this activity is successful, South Africa will benefit.
On the face of it, there's a serious conflict, but it has not arisen in any of the cases. But, you know, watch this space.
To try and find a link between any commercial relationship between the ANC and 𝗙𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗶 investment, as well as this production right, I think it is stretching it.
Shell believes that they have complied with the conditions of the exploration permit and have taken enough precautions to mitigate any irreparable environmental damage.
South Africa in the last 5 years, there has been at least 12 seismic surveys that have been done. And all of those were done safely. The survey that we've started, we've done at least 14% of what we wanted to do. And there has been absolutely no harm to the environment.
The exclusion zone is meant to lessen damage to sea life. Shell has extended it beyond the compulsory 500 meters to 800 meters.
That means that if an animal gets into this exclusion zone, the actual activity gets stopped. On a 24-hour basis, this zone is monitored. This survey that we were conducting in the Wild Coast has the lowest sound levels of any seismic survey that's been conducted in the past.
But these mitigations are not enough for Dr. Jean Harris, who leads the marine program Wild Oceans for Wild Trust.
We know from scientific studies where trained observers were looking for humpback whales that up to 40% were being missed. So what's happening to the rest of them?
Wild Oceans was concerned when Shell decided to start the seismic survey in December at the tail end of the humpback whale migration.
Reported evidence is that animals can lose connection with each other between, for example, a humpback whale and her calf. So it would have been much more responsible to start the survey in January and then to move through till May at maximum.
Elwyn insists more research is needed for South African waters. He's also frustrated by public misconceptions on the impact of seismic surveys.
They have not been linked clearly to killing whales and dolphins. They clearly have behavioral impacts, they mask the communication of animals, there are many negative impacts, but it doesn't result in mass strandings of animals.
We dropped anchor in a quiet stretch of sea to listen on hydrophones to what's going on beneath.
You can still hear the ship in the background, and you can also hear a crackling noise, and that crackling snapping shrimp.
I can hear the crackling. A reminder of the less audible and less visible creatures in the path of seismic surveys. Amongst them, zooplankton, an integral part of marine ecosystems. In an Australian 2017 study published in Nature, Ecology and Evolution, the devastating effects on zooplankton could be seen up to a 1.2 kilometre range.
The zooplankton, the small crustacea and other species which are the bottom of the food web. If you look at what they look like after the shockwave has come through, there was dead ones, damaged ones, indicating that you'd have a mortality or a death on those species.
Wrong place, wrong time. Many marine animals could find themselves in the seismic danger zone, like critically endangered turtle species whose nestlings are swept along the Cape Agulhas current in the months of January to March.
There's also seen to be harmful effects on turtles and other sea creatures.
From our evidence, there hasn't been any damage to those other creatures. We take great care in making sure that if there is any impact, it is an impact that is as small as possible.
Mr. 𝗀𝗏𝗏, nobody's doing turtle tracking surveys post your seismic operations, so we don't really know.
What we do after the survey is completed is to go back there and investigate if there's any damage that has taken place. We do that with each and every one of the surveys that we do.
Do you really?
We do.
With a separate ship?
Yeah, it would be a post-survey ship.
Can you give us examples of some of the ships that go in afterwards?
I can get you that information.
But the devil's in the detail. On request for clarification after the interview, it appears 𝗀𝗀𝗆 was mistaken. There is no post-survey ship. Shell says all monitoring and reporting is in real time from the vessels conducting the actual survey, because they're always on the move. So, without any reliable data after the survey ship has left the area, the knock-on effects are hard to quantify.
You have to ask the question, why is the exploration for oil and gas, which can take up to a decade or more and encourages the use of fossil fuels, being supported by government?
It is Eskom, the operator of the grid, that is saying it is very, very important for them to bring sufficient gas-generated electricity into the grid to stabilize the grid.
And government wants South Africa to have its own supply under the Gas Master Plan, transitioning from an electricity supply system dominated by coal to renewable energy supplemented by gas. So even though South Africa committed to reducing its carbon footprint in global climate agreements, it has carved up its oceans for large-scale oil and gas exploration.
No one is taking a step back and trying to understand the cumulative impact of all these different permits. They're looking at them one by one, and that, I think, is really going to be a disaster.
Well, we've reached our destination, Seal Island, a priceless haven. For South Africa, the economic benefits at this point are uncertain. The landscape for Minister 𝗀𝗄𝗏𝗃𝗃's Gas Master Plan is becoming more of a battleground, possibly at the expense of these trusting creatures.